this episode, we are going to cover on the topic of shame, guilt, and the inner critic. These are aspects that the coaches need to understand because, these are the core human emotions that actually block change.
Yeah.
And as a coach, how do you then work with your clients skillfully and ethically when all these things come up? So today I have with me Xing Jian. He's also a master certified coach,
right.
and I think this would be quite a worthwhile topic to look through.
Yes.
I would assure you that no other coaching school would talk about this.
Yes, 100%.
Except for us. And
Correct.
because it's important to be trauma informed, especially when you don't know what you're dealing with.
Mm.
A lot of what comes out for our clients tend to be more sensitive in nature. They may
Yes.
not speak of it, but then the cues or signals that they express
Mhm.
sometimes show that without saying anything. And I think
Exactly.
that's what we need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So in this topic, right, what we're working on is the building of trust and safety with a client. How do you do that in a powerful way when you are informed about all these aspects of them that are mostly hidden? And also it's around how then do we use that sensitivity to also evoke awareness for them. So these two aspects are your competency 4 and 7.
Correct.
Right? So XJ, when we talk about shame, guilt, and inner critic,
Yeah.
why are they human emotions that actually block change? How do they block change?
I think the nature, like when I hear those words come up and you mention them, right, the immediate accompanying word that appears for me is the word insidious.
Insidious.
Yeah, so it means that to me, these are very sneaky feelings. They are always in the background, but they don't always present themselves like obviously. If it's obvious, any coach can, I wouldn't even say that. I wouldn't say any coach can work with them. If it's obvious, it becomes a bit easier for a coach to work with them. But then what actually happens in most client interactions is that sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of coaches out there will relate to this, you did the coaching, they had a realization, you have the action plan, then come back 2 weeks later, how come it's like no movement? And then, we have to go through the reasons why the movement didn't happen, and it might repeat again. So this should already be a big sign for any coach to begin to investigate what's really going on and keeping the client from making change or progressing in the thing that they say they want to do. And most of the time, I use the word insidious because this aspect of feeling guilt or feeling shame is hard to express even for people themselves. They might not even know that that's what they are feeling. And that's why it takes a long while, or it can take a while to properly sniff it out.
Right. And so for yourself, like when you look at these 3 words, right?
Yeah.
Shame, guilt, and inner critic, like to what degree do each of these resonate for you?
I think for me, the inner critic, the 2 words there, that phrase, is the one that is the most, I call it active, because it's almost like a persona, and it's like a character on its own that does certain things to ourselves, right? We criticize ourselves in a certain way. We also use that lens and look at the world around us, and we pass our judgments and everything. And then the words guilt and shame are actually the more kind of like passive aspects that maybe surface, maybe get evoked, maybe have always been present. Then it boils down to the individual's level of awareness. Like for example, do you know that maybe you are sitting in shame at work every single day, but then maybe you brush it off as like, I'm just feeling a bit tense, or I'm feeling a bit anxious. But what if there was something deeper, right? Similar to guilt. Yeah. So then it becomes a matter of, are we then able to identify what are the symptoms typically that would give you a clue that maybe there is underlying shame, there is underlying guilt. I think inner critic is pretty easy to identify.
Yes, because it exists as a narrative in your mind.
Correct.
That you always use to put yourself down.
Yes, it has an active voice.
Yes.
Right? The minute we all say, you are talking to yourself, or I hear this voice in your head, technically that is part of the inner critic family already.
Yeah, so I think perhaps an example of how an inner critic shows up, often it puts you down to the degree that unless maybe you've completed something and you've completed to your best ability and to your satisfaction, you will not tell people that it's done. Right? So that itself can block change in the sense that maybe something needs to move forward, but because of the expectations you put around how things have to be, because your inner critic say so, you end up stopping the flow for everybody else. Right? So that's an example of a inner critic showing up.
Correct.
How about in the aspect of guilt? I recall recently you seem to have experienced some of that.
Yeah, I think guilt is a very, other than insidious, it's also a very paralyzing emotion. Because it, I mean, let's say, okay, let's look at the most basic mechanic of what guilt is or how it surfaces. For example, you make a promise to a certain person who is important to you, or maybe a certain movement or company, whichever you want to call it. Basically, this other entity is important to you, and you made a promise, and you broke that promise, or you didn't fulfill that promise. Suddenly now you have to deal with a window of feeling bad, feeling guilty of not fulfilling your promise. And I say it's paralyzing because sometimes if you're not careful, the guilt can persist. And it is a bit like a bottomless hole, right? Because guilt has a very, if you examine it, it is a sit down kind of feeling. It is a stay put, it's a very, the other word I use is wallowy kind of feeling. And then whether or not the individual knows how to process their guilt or deal with that guilt, that will link to their own individual like characteristics. You know.
So what sort of responses have you seen or
as a result of someone feeling guilty?
Yes, as a result of guilt.
I can speak for myself first. So for myself, typically when I experience guilt, I am a very immobile person. I tend to not
you
move.
freeze.
I freeze, right? I freeze and then I kind of like just sit in it. I've seen people who will avoid and run, right? So literally sometimes they go running or they will just talk about everything except the guilt that they are feeling.
Or they maybe end up overdoing. They do more because they didn't do it right the first time.
But then the overdoing it is not very helpful because it's a bit almost like blind overdoing.
Yeah, it's overcompensating.
Correct. Yeah, you are trying to use the feeling of I'm doing things to so-called quote unquote make up for your mistake, but actually that's not really the true making up. That's not how you resolve guilt.
Correct. So why does guilt in those responses block change? When you freeze, then nothing gets done.
Correct. Yes.
When you overdo things, then you burn out.
Yes.
So then at some point you slow down and stop.
Yeah.
Right. And how about the avoidance one?
The avoidance one is kind of like a, I feel it's like a distraction thing. So people, I think the distraction of the age of the day would be something like maybe they fall down a YouTube wormhole or they just binge watch Netflix. You know,
true.
So it's about doing the thing that helps you to kind of like go into the this can sound a bit dramatic, but it's almost like a semi-vegetative state because you just don't want to do anything, right? It's like a adjacent to the freezing, but it's more of like this lull. So that's also definitely a blocker to change. Yeah.
Anything that doesn't get you moving, that gets you to slow down and stop at the end of the day, basically blocks change. And
Correct.
I think guilt is quite a common emotion that most people feel. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to talk about how guilt can lock us up in a role.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So guilt, I mean, if I'm looking at my notes here, guilt is often about belonging.
Yeah, that was a very interesting thing that I picked up as well because I like that angle because when you feel guilty, it's because you have this aspect of like, I disappointed someone, I broke my promise, I didn't do what I said I'm supposed to do. Even more layered when, let's say, it is something that you felt passionately about and then you didn't do, and it was connected to someone who is important to you. So now it's almost like you have disappointed another person, plus the next layer of you're disappointed yourself, right? So you have to deal with the voices, the inner critic voices that go, how could I have allowed this to happen? How could I do this to Judy? You know, how could I do this to myself? How could I do this to the whole company? Right? Especially if we are in, let's say, group settings, right, or community settings,
Right.
and maybe it's a very public situation. So it can have all these layers, and then because of that, sometimes it takes a while to work through, unless the person knows how to kind of like snap out of it, in that sense. Yeah. So it's a combination of your own awareness versus do you know your, I guess you can say, your coping mechanism or your reaction to the incident of guilt happening. So when we link it back to the belonging thing, I think it becomes harder to break out of because of the relational bonds that might be present. Yeah, because of, you disappointing a loved one. Yeah, or I don't know if it's dramatic as, do you think it'd be as dramatic as like, it's like a betrayal? I mean, some people, maybe the more drama, people might escalate it in their own minds, right? To that level, oh my God, I betrayed the cause. or I betrayed the company.
I think beyond that, it's also more around like, okay, guilt stops you from moving forward. So, and of course, if a client doesn't do their work and they come to the session, there's going to be a lot of guilt.
That's right.
Or
that's
like when
right.
you call somebody, like that day I was asking for some work to be done, I called the person actually about something else.
Yeah.
But the first response was to apologize for not having
Done the work.
done the work. I was like, you see how fast guilt comes out.
Correct. It's already in their space.
It's already in a space, it shows up, and somebody actually, reaching out becomes like the imagination of being confronted.
Yes.
Right. So
That's right.
how do us as coaches then work with a client who feels guilty through that guilt to emerge in a powerful way?
Yeah. I would think that the first important aspect is when you sense that trepidation or this random maybe apology or this sudden intense like, I'm so sorry, I know I didn't complete what I said I would do. So it's a tone in the voice, right? If you're listening and you notice that is a mode your client is in, as a coach, actually, I would think that you have to slow down and address it gently, right? So the addressing actually depends on the type of relationship you have with the client. If you have a great kind of like robust thing, you can say, hey, I'm noticing that we have kickstarted the session with you already on the back foot, almost like you're apologizing for something, what's going on there, right? So they can be a very direct kind of way.
Yep.
The other one, if let's say your client is not so energetic, then I would say you would have to switch your stance a bit, become a bit gentler, and do more of a gentle call out, right? Say, hey, I'm noticing that we are starting our session a bit differently. Like, what would you mind? Can you tell me what kind of state you are in? As you say those words, like immediately, I haven't said anything. I just said, "How are you?" And you already said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't do my work." Yeah.
Yep. So there's a lot of that unpacking of the guilt that's needed.
Correct.
Right. And then at the same time, doing a reality check, because sometimes the guilt part is it's a symptom of like over punishing yourself.
Yes. Yeah. It's a self-beating,
self-flagellating.
Yeah, that's right.
Sort of thing that's happening, and the faster you can get the coachee out of it, the faster they can move forward with things.
Yeah.
And it's important to explore the attachment they have that keeps them in that state for that long.
Yeah.
Okay, and how about shame?
Wow, shame is also I feel it's a very unique kind of situation. Yeah, because
it's an emotion no one names, so it survives in silence.
Correct. And shame is very often typically not directed outwards. Or not sorry, I'm not talking about direction. It is normally not so clearly connected to like an external situation, but it's mostly like it's more inward facing. Like no one really knows that you feel shameful unless you say so, or
but it's definitely connected to an external situation, just that it's inwardly directed.
Let me think. Yeah, okay. So something has happened in the client's environment or in the client's immediate world, so called, right? And then it evokes or it triggers the feeling of shame.
What makes shame so hard to talk about?
I think the nature of it being hard to talk about is because it's very easy to conflate or collapse with other emotions that come with.
So maybe let's make a clear example of it. Right, for instance, fat shaming.
Okay.
Right, that I think is quite common.
Yeah.
It is sometimes done without much thinking. When a person is of a body size that's different from normal.
That's right.
Right. So, what is it like experiencing shame?
I think when you talk about, let's say you use the example of fat shaming, it is normally the recipient would feel small, would feel criticized and judged. There is a external pressure that is put onto them first, right, as the first touch point, and that creates kind of like a cage around them. And then when they witness this so-called external input that is specific to their body shape or body size, suddenly they will feel it's almost like they shame themselves, right? There's a bit of that self-blame, or there's a bit of that self-criticism, and this is where it brings me back to my earlier point about how shame tends to combine with something else. So like you will use your inner critic to shame yourself, as opposed to like critic. I mean, I feel at this point we're mincing words. Like if you criticize yourself, you're also kind of like shaming yourself, because you use those words with that with the emotional energy of shame on yourself. So I feel shameful that I let myself get so fat, for instance, right?
Understand.
Yeah.
So what would you say you will avoid talking about because of the shame you feel?
I think when shame is at a high enough level, there is a general sense of not wanting to express oneself, and then you begin to speak at a very surface level of things. So normally, I would say a client can sound very functional, or they're just trying to, they are in the mode of like, I just want to get through the session, or I just want to say the thing that I know the coach would maybe want to hear that will allow me to get through the session functionally, for instance, right? As opposed to actually taking a deeper look at like why are they in the state that they're in. Yeah.
And how would you say, like in your experience coaching so far, right? How does shame express itself in silence, and how do you as a coach pick it up?
Sometimes, that's a great question, and a challenging one as well, because it also takes, for example, now they ask me also some of my own personal reflection to see like how did I identify a client who might be experiencing shame. One simple example, sometimes it's trusting your instincts, and there's a bit of guesswork, right? So you have to ask for permission to share an observation, and you might have to actually introduce the word shame inside, because sometimes the client might be experiencing shame, but they don't actually articulate it. They have not made the connection to the word. But when you do the articulation for them, they suddenly go, oh my goodness, that's what I've been feeling. I feel ashamed. Then now there's a link, and suddenly you see a shift in them, because the energy is not able to flow. The correct naming of the term provides an output for the emotions to come up, and then that's one way of shifting. Right. The other way that I would think would be you would have to spend some time to kind of walk the client through their present experience. So it can be as simple as, hey, I want us to take a pause and let's really look at this present moment as that we are in right now. Right? We have talked about the project and the work not being done. We have talked about some of the criticisms you have received, but I want us to shift our focus a little bit. Right? Let's talk through the various emotions you're experiencing, and then you do a list, for instance. That can be a systematic way to kind of work things through, and as the client does that for coaching at a deeper level, you want to be very observant, because as they are doing the work and listing their emotions, you also need to watch them, because you don't know how there might be a micro expression, there might be a shift in their energy or their tone that might give you a clue, right? And then you can point out and go, hey, when you mentioned the anger part, there was a slight quiver in your voice, What else was present as you talked about anger? Then they'll go, oh yeah, my voice did quiver. Then maybe they go, oh, there's a bit of anxiety or uncertainty. Oh, that's interesting too, right? So now you have additional things to add to the list. Yeah. So even whatever the client might think is clear for them as a list of emotions might not be complete, because as they are expressing it, you as the observer in the coach role might pick up more things that you can bring to their attention.
Yeah, I think when I think about the word shame, right, it comes to my mind this whole idea of my head is hung in shame.
Oh, the literal action, right? Yeah, correct.
But then at the same time, there is the undeserving energy that comes out around.
Like I don't deserve this.
Yes.
What did I do to deserve this kind of energy?
Correct.
Okay.
So when it comes to shame, right? Like there's this term around I did something wrong versus I am wrong.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the tendency to attribute to yourself things that happen. And that goes hand in hand with shame.
Yeah.
Right. So what impact does shame then have on agency and choice of a person?
I think maybe we need to unpack a little bit that difference between I did something wrong versus I am wrong, right? I am wrong almost feels like some kind of absolute state where it is a self-criticism of the whole themselves as a whole person versus just an isolated like incident or action. And I would think I am wrong is way heavier than I did something wrong. Yeah. So if our
it's the degree of blame you're taking on.
Yeah, correct. Oh, I like how that. Yeah, I like how you phrase that. Yes, it's the degree of blame that you're taking on, and I think it also gives you as the coach a clear picture of how much is your client able to do a separation for themselves in terms of their own personal awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think there's also this thing around how the coach is paying attention to the nuances
of the languaging.
Correct. Because just these two, they sound similar.
Yeah.
You did something wrong versus you're wrong. But it's just that there's a connotation that's so much stronger in the I'm wrong part. Is when I feel into it, it's almost like you're wrong, your existence can be erased. Sort of thing.
It's so absolute, right?
Yes.
It's a bit so big in that sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when a person holds shame, generally, I mean, from my perspective, working with people who've gone through that, there's not a lot of agency or choice. They tend to believe that, that's why I say they tend to believe they're undeserving, and so they tend to go with what others, they tend to give their power away to others.
I see.
So the agency and choice goes missing so that they can continue to stay in that shame.
So then, would you say it's also, in a sense, it's almost like a state of helplessness?
Yes.
Somehow. Yeah.
Yes. And that no matter what they do, they're like that, lor. Things will happen a certain way. So there is also a certain degree of like hopelessness or resignation.
Ah, okay.
Right. So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's very interesting because then it is like how, because you see, even though they can be in a very low state, and let's say they say that they're very helpless, right? I was going to say that but it is actually still like an externalization of the blame. It's like there's no ownership in any part of that experience, and they just,
because I'm already like that.
Yes. Yeah. So then when a client is in that kind of state, it also definitely blocks change because there is no desire to want to be different or even to see the thing differently. And normally you need to at least minimally see the thing differently before we can even discuss how change can happen.
Correct. So as a coach, how do you then work with a client to get them to step out and try harder when that shame is running?
If you're talking about like coaching style, or are you talking about like coaching approach?
Either way.
I think for me, coaching style wise, of course the default is that we always follow the principles of coaching, which is through the interactions, observations and questioning, we're trying to help them to become more aware, right? But I do think that the stance or the technique you can use in observation can vary, for instance, right? Like sometimes because of the nature of guilt and shame and inner critic, there is that tendency to over dramatize or over repeat it, right? And it becomes something that they become very, like you said earlier, attached to. So in a way, as a coach, you need to, I call it like, you need to lay down the law, at least for the coaching session.
Okay.
And maybe be that objective voice and say, hey, look, this is what you've been doing for the past 15 minutes. You have said this thing, you've said this thing, you've said this thing. And from my perspective, you said it in this tone and this tone and this tone. Would you agree? You know, so there's a bit of like a deal making.
Yeah, like fishing.
Yeah, it's like both fishing, but you're also trying to get them to be objective also. Because when you step into an objective kind of like objective description kind of mode, they have to, in that sense, follow, right? And be engaged, right? If your client is not being engaged with you at that point, then that's a different topic for a different module, right? That's where client is choosing at some level to not want to be a part of the coaching conversation already.
Yeah, correct. So I would say that in terms of dealing with clients when it comes to shame, there's a lot around tapping back into their dream. Like whatever they are choosing to do, why is it that they want it? Right? And bring the agency back. So that it becomes something that can counter this reticence of shame that they sit in.
That's true. Yeah. I think I like what you just said, because then when you ask them suddenly like, so what did you originally want for this change or this project, right? it can act as kind of like you're jamming their system, because in that moment maybe they are so hyper attached to the shame and they repeat, the situation about how things are all falling apart, it's not my fault, or it's all everyone's fault. Yeah, it's that kind of, you need to jam the...
Yeah, like they will go into an auto self-blame.
Yes,
and then it
correct.
goes down this slippery slope of, we can't get anywhere because the client just wants to blame themselves, and then, okay lor, that's it.
Correct.
But then the thing here is, how do you distinguish asking questions that actually deepen awareness versus self-blame? How do we bring that sensitivity into how we approach or how we question?
I think you first need to actually begin to even know if and to what degree of self-blame is actually happening. Yeah, because you can never truly know, I feel, if your question will evoke self-blame, unless you are being a bit strange as a coach and you ask them an on-the-nose question, like how much do you blame yourself? Which actually might be an interesting, good starting point, because it helps you to gauge where they are at, and then your follow-up questions then shift accordingly, right? I don't really have a clear question sequence in my head because that's not how coaching works.
Yes.
But in general, it will be I guess in principle you can say you want to ascertain the nature in which they have attached themselves to the concept of self-blame.
Yep. So the whole idea of like perhaps making the observation.
Yes.
That I noticed that you've been sitting in this state of self-blame for a while now, and like notice what kind of movement this brings. If at all.
Correct. Yeah. What's the impact of you being in this state? Yeah. Things like that.
Yeah.
So that can be helpful. Or that's definitely something that I think a coach minimally has to do.
Yes, correct. And also putting the point across that the whole point of you being here is not really to sit in this, because there's something bigger you're trying to get to. But at the same time, we want to be able to tackle this.
Yeah.
Right, because it looks like it's a showstopper for you.
Yeah.
And we want to deepen that awareness that you have to understand what triggers that, what surrounds that, how you respond to it, that brings you into this hole that you're in right now.
When you mentioned sensitivity, right, what were you referring to when approaching or when tackling this concept of self-blame?
I would say that the whole idea of shame and self-blame is so entrenched in a person who is experiencing that they might not even want to move. And like, if a coach is not sensitive about what he or she says to the client, then they are just going to dig a deeper hole and sit in it versus move, right? Although the premise of a client coming to coaching is that they are a fully functional person.
True.
But the thing is,
that might not always...
Sometimes you don't know when you end up pressing a button that you shouldn't.
Correct.
And the thing is, when the button gets pressed, what do you do?
Yes.
And that's what we're really trying to address here.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That clarifies. Because for me, when it came to the topic of sensitivity, from my perspective in my practice, I don't function with that as the primary concern. My assumption is that my clients are ready for change and they're ready for the session, and only if something a bit unusual or different happens, then maybe I'll go, okay, I need to turn on or increase, I'll tune up the sensitivity dial and maybe slow down and be a bit more nuanced, both in my observation also in my questioning.
Right.
Yeah. So that's normally my approach. That's why I asked to clarify for that. Yeah.
I see. So then, when a client feels shame for not progressing the way that they need to at a certain rate, how do we slow down and work with them so that they don't feel that way and can move forward?
Yeah, I think for me, the fact that guilt or shame and inner critic even surfaces in a coaching session is actually a powerful learning moment. And I think as a coach, we should explicitly say so to the client. Like, so, from your perspective as your coach, this episode or this season or this moment of you feeling all this guilt, right, and self-blame and shame can become a powerful lesson for yourself, right? So then when you reflect through the past, 15, 20 minutes or so, and you look at this topic and you look at yourself, what are you learning, for instance? So turning it into a learning moment is a powerful thing, because obviously this is part of their, I guess you can say, way of functioning or how they move through life. So if you have that moment to teach them something or for them to learn for themselves, then as a coach you should bring that learning point up, because it will affect the rest of your coaching relationship with them for sure. Yeah. So for me, I would be quite explicit and maybe frame some learning questions around it, and also frame it as like, so how will this I guess inform the way you approach your project? How will this help make you like more adept at approaching the transformation that you said you wanted when we started the coaching engagement? Yeah, so it's always about bringing some things back to reality and then reframing it as lessons, reframing it as like cornerstones that they can, anchors, right, that they can lean on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also perhaps this whole thing around inviting them to take time to slow down and examine what this is about.
Yeah.
Right. So
Correct.
because this is not the first time this is happening, it's repeated, and until we nip in the bud, it's just going to keep repeating.
Correct.
Right, which is of no support to the person who wants to grow.
Correct.
So really taking time to slow down and like just touch on that so that it can move forward more purposefully.
Right. And I think if there are any clients who, let's say, resist the slowing down, or like they don't really want to look at the shame and the guilt, that alone actually is a very powerful angle already.
Yeah.
Because it really then...
the resistance will show itself.
Yes.
And you got to talk about the resistance or work on
Correct.
that.
Yeah. So naturally that already will evoke more awareness and bring more transformation. If you can get them over the line to actually work through the resistance and look at their relationship to these more lesser spoken about emotions, shame, guilt. Yeah.
Right. So then as a coach, right, how do we then draw that boundary between insight versus emotional harm?
Insight versus emotional harm.
Yeah. Because if the person is open and willing, right, they might be able to see something different that helps them to move forward powerfully.
Correct.
But where it gets taken the wrong way because they are maybe somewhat already traumatized, it might cause more harm than needed. Then we should.
So you're saying that there could be a moment where an exchange between the coach and the client could create more harm.
Correct.
I
Because
see.
of how the coach handled it.
Mm.
Right, because like I imagine if you have somebody who's more of a authoritative or a army-like personnel,
for example,
style coming up, then naturally that would definitely be like a sledgehammer coming down on somebody who's really
to say like they can't deal with their guilt or they are in a
Yes.
guilty state. I can see that. I would think that you would then have to... this one, your coaching skill and your observation must be pretty up there, because it's less about coaching skill, but it's more
about how you're being.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It's like, because obviously the way that you were being when you uttered whatever that you uttered was received in a certain way by your client. Right. Granted, yes, it's two parts here. One is how you are being. Two is whatever lens they might have on that makes them receive it in a certain way. So when the so-called, the quote-unquote damage, the impact has happened, you have to be able to catch it in the moment, because if not, they might walk away holding that as something that's unresolved, right? So when you catch that happening, you need to once again pause and you actually need to address it, right? And it might not have to be addressed aggressively. It can be addressed in like a generic, neutral, reflective way. For example, like, how did you feel when I made that observation? Or how did you feel when I shared that observation? As opposed to something like, you okay with... Are you okay when I said that you seem to take on a lot of self-blame? It's really like a stance kind of thing.
Yes, but I think if we talk less in the term of words, but maybe more in the state of being, then what kind of being does a coach need to take on in order to, support the client? Because like from how I would approach it, it will almost be like I'm encompassing the person in a way that makes them feel very safe, very comfortable, and like they're being nurtured to that it's okay to step out and like look at this and take their baby steps out.
Yeah. For me, I agree with what you said, and I guess you can say my description is a bit different, but I think we are representing the same thing. My description is that when I'm coaching a person, I am here for the client's highest good, right? Or I am here to represent the highest good, and the highest good means that I should be able to reflect in all honesty and all gracefulness what the client needs to see for them to transform or to push through their barrier, right? And so it becomes more of like a empowering, supportive space as opposed to like a how come you cannot see what I'm seeing kind of space, right? So I think sometimes when you are in a third person perspective, so I mean in Mandarin you say 旁观者清, which means like as a coach you are in the position where it's supposed to be the observer mode, right?
Yep.
The observer themselves are not always neutral, and it can get frustrating when you see a client in a certain state. But then that is the coach's work to catch yourself if there are these
judgments and bias,
reactions, biases coming in, and remember that your coaching presence or your coaching state should still be for the client's growth and transformation and change. Baseline, your neutrality, objectivity, all those still need to be like your foundation.
Correct. I think as a coach, you need to ask yourself or challenge yourself with the question of who are you to judge this person?
Yes.
Because how do you know what is it that they come into this engagement with?
Yeah.
Like what you know about them from the chemistry session is but the tip of it.
Yes.
Right, but they might have gone through a lot of stuff that's a lot deeper that took a lifetime of experiences to accumulate that they haven't shared with you yet.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's not just down to I instinctively feel this, so then it should be right and that should be everything.
Yeah.
But then there's a person is so layered, which is why we're taking time to talk through all these layers that will allow you to navigate in a better way.
Yes, correct.
So then there's shame. There's a lot around shame that we've spoken about. Right, so coming back to inner critic, which we started with earlier on.
Yeah.
Right, we spoke about what that means and how it shows up. But what do you think is the role of an inner critic? Why does it exist in the minds of so many people?
I think the inner critic is born the minute we are born.
Really?
Okay, no, that's a bit of an exaggeration. I think it is born the first time we receive feedback about us interacting with the world around us. So this is not a negative thing, right? Like even when, let's say as a child, you managed to stand for the first time at however many months old, and then you heard this voice from the heavens say, "Good job, so smart." And then you have a reaction to that, like, ooh, something positive happened when I stood up. That part of your awareness is already unlocked already.
But then it also means that the positive invites the negative.
Correct. Because now you're beginning to have this concept or this idea of like a positive response versus a negative response. No one explicitly says to a 1 month old, "Good job, this is positive, bad job, that is negative," right?
But it's what you're picking up energetically.
Exactly. Right. So you already begin to subconsciously, very unconsciously have this list, or it's like a manual for yourself, like what in your world around you is considered good versus bad. And then that becomes kind of like this new rule book that you use not only against yourself but also against the world around you and the environments around you. And we continuously build this book as we grow up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's quite nice. So what really is our inner critic protecting us from?
Yeah. I think the inner critic, sometimes the inner critic, right, if you use the stance of protecting us from something, right, it could mean that it is functioning off of a current version. So like ChatGPT had different versions, right? So your inner critic has a version, and its version will do its best to try to, I guess, work in your favor or what it assumes to be your favor, and it's trying to protect you from situations that will be not in your favor. So for example, let's say your inner critic is very skewed towards protecting you from embarrassment or shame. So it might tell you things like, hey, prepare properly before you step out on stage, or don't make a fool of yourself. Check your attire in the mirror at least 3 times before you leave the changing room. So it has all these different examples of how it's trying to protect you because it perceives you in a certain way. Yeah. I say it as if like it's a different character, but your inner critic is also you.
Yeah.
Right. So you perceive yourself in a certain way and you're trying your best to do the things in this way. And it will keep functioning in that version until you actively give it an update. Yeah. So there has to be a bit of self-autonomy, right? To say, hey, inner critic, I'm updating you today. Right. So a very common example would be people who grow up in toxic environments. Right. Let's say they accept abuse from their families or their siblings for a long, long time. Right. And they think it's okay because the inner critic says, just take it. If you don't take it, then you are a bad child. Then the subtext is you might not win daddy mommy's love if you rebel. Right.
Wow, that's so deep.
Right. Then let's say the abuse gets so bad that the inner critic is forced to get updated. It suddenly has to make a choice. Do I continue to take the abuse just to so-called sustain daddy mommy's love, or do I say enough is enough and I need to start living for myself?
Yep.
When you choose the latter, suddenly your behavior will change because your inner critic has updated its system. Yeah. So your inner critic it can be very destructive, but it can also be very helpful.
Yep.
So it's about how well you know it.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at this whole thing around inner critic, what is it actually protecting you from?
Yeah.
I think it's more of like you criticize yourself first so that nobody else can.
Yes, that's also one very common mechanism. I say myself first so that no one else can say me.
Yeah. Like you attack yourself first because whatever the others can say cannot be worse than what you're saying to yourself.
Yeah.
But then you constantly keep yourself in a place where you then don't feel good about yourself. And I think if you're a coach, then that is really challenging in terms of, bringing your client forward. Because you're constantly doubting your abilities as a coach.
Yes, correct.
Right, and you become very reliant on what the client says.
Yes, versus versus being more objective.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Correct. So that's the danger.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to looking at clients' inner critic versus looking at coaches' inner critic, it's actually quite different, but there's a bit of a connection. So let's talk about the quick difference first. The first, when you're looking at a client's inner critic, there's a greater weightage on your ability to observe, listen, and be objective. Right. So that's more connected to your skill. If you're looking at your inner critic, that is more of your personal awareness and your ability to be discerning about when are you being neutral and when you're being not. The connection between both is that it still depends a lot on your ability to do your own inner work and your own self-work and awareness work to know these differences. Right? And unfortunately, as far as I can tell, at this stage in the world of personal development, there isn't like a scale that you can like plug your brain into and it tells you your level of achievement when it comes to how well do you know your inner critic. Yeah.
But actually what you said just triggered a thought, right?
Yeah.
That when you have an inner critic within you, like just when you spoke about updating your files.
Yes. That's
right. So the inner critic definitely comes from a place of the past, of how you looked at yourself or how others looked at you, that you internalized it. But perhaps that was something that happened 10, 20 years back.
Yeah.
And you're still running it. And so the whole point of updating your system, it's a lot to do with, is that the person you are now?
Yes.
And if not, how have you actually changed? How do you now show up differently? And who is this person that you really are now versus who you think you are?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us exist in the past.
Mm.
Not many parts of us are in the present because we are so caught up in the doing that we cannot recognize when things have changed, that we're a different person.
That's right.
And I think when we're saying that, we're not coming from a place of we are experts, that's why. But then it's also because we ourselves, we probably have also experienced that before.
Yeah.
Right? Like what would be an example that, you know, you feel like you have progressed and that you didn't see that for yourself until an extent where you had to go through your own system update?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me think of one. I think then the my personal experience of like my relationship to my body and how I look is the one of the more dramatic ones. Yeah. So like for instance, right, in the past I would be very, very reticent or very, very resistant to like taking my shirt off in public because of what I perceive and everything. Yeah. But then recently at a retreat, right, there was an exercise that required that, and I did it without a second thought. And I'm actually having the second thought now. Because at that time, I did not think of like my old version of my inner critic. It goes, everyone can see you topless. Embarrassing or not.
But it's happening right now.
Happening right now as in like I am updating the file, almost like I'm retroactively realizing that the file was updated, but I didn't realize the system already updated.
Right.
Because the window of shame or fear or self-criticism was actually very small. It was like a thought of, hey, you're taking off your shirt. Then the response was, okay, yeah. Okay. And then we moved on. Right. So as I'm sharing with you now, I think there was an update. I just wasn't super aware of it. So something has shifted.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, it's different. It's more of I had to update my system.
More actively.
Yeah, so like recently I had to, I've been more out there this year in terms of filming and talking and shit like that.
Yeah.
And at some level, I realized that like in the past, I probably am a lot more serious as a person. And then like I actually didn't realize that I've shifted to become somebody who smiles more.
Oh.
And how did I discover it? When I was trying to act for the camera, I realized that, hey, it's very challenging for me when people say, can you don't smile so much? Oh. Then I was like, I didn't know I was smiling that much.
I see.
And then like shifting to a serious state almost feels like I'm going back to my past self. Right? So that is where the system has to update itself that, hey, actually you're different from the person you used to be.
Yeah.
Right? And it is going through that allows us to also update the inner critic and either diminish the aspect of the inner critic, that the hold that they have over our lives.
Yes.
And also begin to step into your own personal power. Because whether it is shame, guilt, or inner critic, they are all aspects that keep you small.
Yeah.
To not move, to not step out. But the thing is how they are holding you in, like, justified. Because are you still the same person that you thought you were that continues to carry that shame, that guilt, that inner critic?
Right.
Perhaps you've really changed, and what you really need is to be able to recognize that, sit with it, and perhaps operate in life differently.
100% agree.
Yeah. So if you were a coach, and your inner critic leaks into the session, what can you do about it? What might your inner critic say about your coaching?
Like me personally?
Or that, you also mentor coaches.
Yeah.
So what have you actually seen and experienced?
I mean, the most common one is, am I asking the right question? So let me, because this is meant for like people who are learners of coaching, also to improve themselves.
Yes.
So maybe I can share like how when I mentor, I try to reframe a little bit for them. So as opposed to sticking to the am I asking the right question, right? A reframing could be, I look forward to the right question, or I look forward to the next question. Because when you say am I asking the right question, it will be a never-ending search for the right question. But in coaching, it's not about finding the right question, especially when you're training, right? It is about
experimenting,
and it's about having this attitude of being able to move forward, right? So that's why I would frame it as like, I look forward to the next question, right? So it's crucial. Like anyone who says that they want to improve in their coaching skill, you have to have this forward-looking attitude, right? The minute you let your inner critic go, oh my God, I asked a series of 5 lousy questions, those are 5 anchors holding you back. You know, if we don't transform them into some form of learning, some form of note taking for yourself, then they will literally become dead weight. Yeah, so you must be mindful of that. Yeah. So that's what I would try to tell mentees who sometimes get overly attached to the, oh, my questions are so bad. But it's like, truly, there is not that much damage a quote unquote bad question can do.
Yeah, correct. I feel like sometimes when you end up stopping yourself because of your inner critic, you deprive yourself of the chance to grow.
Yes.
Because the inner critic, well, it is there, but the thing here is you're still new in training up as a coach.
Exactly.
And nobody does it perfect the first time.
Yeah.
It's just that we are here to live life, but we are not able to live life perfect the first time because it's our first time experiencing it.
Yes. Correct.
Right? And what we can do is to learn from what didn't work out, recalibrate, and take a different stance moving forward.
Yeah.
But if there is so much concern to the degree that it paralyzes you, then you end up not being able to experience shift or even impact the person who's sitting in front of you.
That's
right. It becomes an endless selfish cycle of how you look versus what's your intention here as a coach.
Correct.
Are you here to impact the other person, or are you here to look at whether you are looking good
or
with
not
the client?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's important to remind yourself of like your own conviction as a coach.
Mm.
What made you want to become a coach in the first place, and what is it you need to tackle or overcome?
Correct.
That would put you in the best position to support your client. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that is where sometimes the lines sometimes blur.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So as a coach, right, what are some techniques a coach can use to mask any sort of self-doubt that they might have?
Oh, like at least to hold some form of presence.
Yes.
The ones that I like to give as tips would be like to not afraid to take a breath, to slow down. You know, sometimes I would tell my mentees, you can open your mouth and say, let me have a little bit of a think, or let me think a bit before I give my next response.
Right.
You know, then for me, it is a clear communication, but it is also a way for you to buy some time for yourself to settle down, to gain back a bit of presence. If let's say you were thrown a little bit by what the client said,
right,
and you look kind of cool because you are telling the client to say, oh, let me think a bit. Right, so that's one of my favorite ones, and it gives some breathing room, especially for new coaches or coaches in training.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you have an interesting one that you share with your mentees?
In terms of like just
navigating these kind of like awkward moments, or like
the self-doubt
moments. Yeah.
To me, it's just about shifting your own state, right? Because going back to the coach self, who is this coach self you're embodying? And like, how do you step into that? Because evidently when you step into self-doubt, that's a different person who's in the seat.
Correct.
Right? But then as a coach, you are trained to have a coach self, and you are meant to embody and hold that coach self wherever you go, especially when you're with clients.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, the self-doubt shouldn't come in, and if it does, the first thing is, are you recognizing that you're not being your coach self, but you're being you?
Yeah.
And then like, is that appropriate because you have a paying client in front of you and they're here to benefit from what you can bring to the table?
Yeah.
So it is always a matter of carrying your own professionalism with you that could support your client best.
Correct. Yeah.
Self-doubts, I think they can be tackled after the session. Right. So there's always a time and place for things to happen. When it's in the middle of a coaching session, it's not the most appropriate moment, because then who's the one getting the attention here? Yeah. Is it you or is it the coachee? And if you are holding that, then are you going to pay the coachee for the time that they have to listen into you, even though they can't support you past that?
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to, you know, one of the videos where we shared about how it's important to make sure that you get your issues worked on by somebody else. Like, even the whole act of self-coaching can only bring you that far.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, because there's only so much you're working with within your own self-awareness. How about blind spots? How do you even find that? You definitely need somebody external to you to work on that, and that's what's going to keep you in a tip-top position to coach your clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. What else? Anything else that you'd like to add on?
I think maybe I can just add a little bit around the coach self and another way of doing that internal regulation, right?
Okay.
So the method I shared earlier was more of a explicit external thing where you say out and you ask for that time. The internal thing that I wanted to share was, and I think this is important for coaches at all levels to know, is that you do have authority and power as a coach. The position itself grants you power because of the position, first and foremost. We don't even need to count in your personal experience and gravitas and whatever's on your LinkedIn profile yet, right? The fact that someone has engaged you as a coach means that they want to hear from you or they want to interact with you because they see some form of value in you already. That's why you made it past the chemistry session.
Yep.
So you have to remember that internally, especially when in session maybe you start to flounder a bit or you start to feel uncertain. Right? This person here has chosen you. So then the question is, do you remember that and can you choose yourself again in that moment and believe in yourself as opposed to like going into, oh no, things are not going to work or I don't know what question to ask. Right? Yeah. So I think that's an important reminder. You have been chosen. So the important thing is, can you continuously choose yourself even through the moments of self-doubt? Yeah. So that's more of the an internal perspective that I share.
Yeah, I think that's important. So anything else you'd like to leave them with when it comes to wrapping up this?
I think just quick reminders or summaries, right, around the ideas of shame, guilt, and inner critic. They are kind of like good friends. They do have positive and negative impacts. It is up to then you, the coach, to be able to exercise your personal awareness and really begin to look at what's going on there.
Yep.
So that you know what's the best approach for any kind of client situation that you're in.
Yeah, I think the best way to get started is to really look into your own, because I think most people have an inner critic or have experienced guilt and shame before. So being able to tap into your own and start reflecting on how it shows up for you personally and also as a coach.
Yes.
Because then when you have that awareness and wisdom, that's where you can then better appreciate, like, you know, what happens for the client when it shows up.
Correct.
So start to do that self-work that you need to progress as a coach so that you can also do the same with your client.
Correct. You are always your first reference point.
Yeah. And with that, we'll wrap this up and we'll see you in the next video.
See you, everyone.
Yeah.